We're going to talk about Alexander the Great and King Darius. Alexander the Great and King Darius. I'm reading this book on the rights of war and peace by Hugo Grotius. And he's just talking about on the unjust causes of war. What are the unjust causes of war? Of course, you have a right to defend yourself. So that's a just cause of war. What's an unjust? In the former part of this work where the justice of war was discussed, it was observed that some wars were founded upon real motives, but others only upon colorable pretexts. This distinction was first noticed by Polybius, who calls the pretext some Greek word, and the real causes a different Greek word. Thus Alexander made war upon Darius under the pretense of avenging the former wrongs done by the Persians to the Greeks. But the real motive of that bold and enterprising hero was the easy acquisition of wealth and dominion, which the expeditions of Xenophon and Agesilaus had opened to his view. So Alexander just saw an opportunity to smash a weak enemy so he could take their wealth and dominion. So it was just a war of conquest. Just a war of conquest. That is unjust cause of war. It's not a just war. And then I'm kind of curious about what happens in the long run. Greece is still just a tiny little country over by the way, right? And then Iran is still a country too. So in the long run, well, let's just talk about Darius and Alexander. So Darius and Alexander. I got three battles here. There's the Battle of Gaugamela. Then there's the Battle of Issos, and then the Siege of Gaza. There's a Siege of Gaza too. So Alexander, he's just a guy back in the day of Macedon, a Macedonian Greek. He was a king of the ancient Greek kingdom of Macedon. He was born in 356 BC and he's going to die at 323 BC at the 32 years of age. But he's able to conquer like most of the world, right? But it was just war of conquest. So he wasn't able to hold on to the war. And then hold on to all of his land. And then I also heard that the whole point of him conquering all them lands was he just wanted to see the ocean. He just wanted to go see the Atlantic Ocean on the other side of China. He just wanted to see the ocean. So let's start out with the Battle of Issos. This occurs in southern Anatolia, November 5th, 333 BC, between the Hellenic League led by Alexander the Great and the Achaemenid Empire led by Darius III. It was the second great battle of Alexander's conquest of Asia, and the first encounter between Darius III and Alexander the Great. The battle resulted in the Macedonian troops defeating the Persian forces. After the Hellenic League soundly defeated the Persian satraps of Asia Minor, led by the Greek mercenary Menon of Rhodes at the Battle of the Granicus, Darius took personal command of his army. He gathered reinforcements and proceeded to lead his men in a surprise march behind the Hellenic advance. In order to cut off their line of supply, Alexander was forced to countermarch, and the stage was set for battle near the mouth of the Pinaris River in the town of Issos. So he's going to defeat him there. So he just wants to take Darius's wealth. He wants to take his land, take his wealth, take his dominion, take everything that is. So King Darius was the last king of the Achaemenid dynasty. He reigned from 336 to 330 BC. He died in Bactria. Darius belonged to a collateral branch of the royal family, was placed on the throne by the eunuch Bagoas, who had poisoned the two previous kings, Artaxerxes III and Arsus. When Darius had asserted his independence, Bagoas also attempted to murder Darius III, but instead Darius III forced the eunuch Bagoas to drink the poison himself. And of course, a eunuch is a man who's had his nuts cut off he's been castrated or deprived of his testes or external genitals. So they cut his nuts, cut his penis off, and why would they do that? I don't know why they would do that. So they don't have to worry about his testosterone. They're saying, sometimes it's used with rhetoric, you're just a eunuch, saying that you're not a powerful man or you lack virility. You're not able to give birth because you're probably just a eunuch. A lot of times eunuchs were employed as guards and servants in harems and other women's quarters, guards and servants. Sometimes they were chamberlains. Eunuchs were often employed as chamberlains to kings, high-ranking civil servants in China. Eunuchs were sometimes employed as high-ranking civil servants because they're unable to have children and therefore they weren't tempted to seize power. So what was up with this eunuch? Ba-Goas kept on poisoning all these kings. He poisoned Artaxerxes III and Arsus. And then he tried to poison Darius III, and Darius was like, no. The poisoning stops today. The siege of Gaza would be the last one. The Battle of Gaugamela, it's also called the Battle of Arbela. It took place 331 BC between the forces of the army of Macedon under Alexander the Great and the Persian army under King Darius III. It was the second and final battle between the two kings and is considered to be the final blow of the Achaemenid Empire, resulting in its complete conquest by Alexander. The fighting took place in Gaugamela, a village on the banks of the river Bumodus, north of Arbela, which is modern-day Erbil in Iraqi Kurdistan. So in Iraq, crazy. Okay, so despite being heavily outnumbered, the army of Macedon emerged victorious due to the employment of superior tactics and the clever usage of light infantry forces. It was a decisive victory for the League of Corinth, and it led to the fall of the Achaemenid Empire and of Darius III. This happens October 1st, 331 BC. Alexander gains Babylon, half of Persia, and all the other parts of Mesopotamia. The casualties that were lost, Darius is going to lose between 40 to 90,000 are going to get killed, and then 300,000 were captured. So that was a lot killed, 40,000 and 90,000. And then Alexander only lost 1,000, 1,100 to 1,500 men. And then 1,000 cavalry and 100 to 500 infantry. So I guess that's how that breaks down. So just by those, right, in terms of death count, Alexander lost 1,500 men and Darius lost 40,000 to 90,000 men. And ultimately Darius is defeated. But according to Hugo Grotius, this is an unjust war. You can't just go in and take Palestine. You can't just go and take Iraq. You can't just go steal Mexico because of the bullshit pretenses. Oh, Saudi Arabia attacked you on 9/11, so you get to attack Afghanistan and Iraq? That's a bullshit pretense. So it's not a just war. It makes me think that the Catholic Church actually was right when they opposed the Iraq War. Now, the siege of Gaza, as part of the wars of Alexander the Great, it took place in October of 332 BCE, and it resulted in a victory for Macedon, and it ended the 31st dynasty of Egypt, which functioned as a satrapy under the Achaemenid Persian Empire. Alexander succeeded in breaching the walls of Gaza by utilizing the engines that he had employed earlier that year during the siege of Tyre. Following 3 unsuccessful assaults, the Macedonian army was able to storm and take the Gazan stronghold. Batis, the military commander of Gaza's fortress, expected to hold the city as well as the rest of Egypt in complete subjection until the raising of another army by Persian King Darius III. Confronting Alexander at Gaza was crucial to denying the Macedonians a route into the Egyptian mainland. The fortress was located on an eminence on the edge of a desert from which the surrounding area could be easily controlled, including the main road from Assyria to Egypt. The city, over 60 feet high, was traditionally employed, also 18 meters, that was traditionally employed to control the surrounding area, which even then was a hotbed of dissent. Batis was aware that Alexander was leading his army southward after successfully conquering Tyre. and therefore provisioned Gaza for a long siege by the Macedonian army. It is also likely that he was aware of Alexander's intention to secure absolute control over the Mediterranean coast before mounting an invasion of the Persian mainland. So Gaza was the route to Egypt. They needed to conquer Gaza so they could get into Egypt. And then it's going to take down the Persian Empire. It's going to take down the Egyptian Empire. So that Alexander, he had a bunch of unjust wars, taking a bunch of land. And he died at 32.